Hi everyone, and welcome to a new edition of You Are My Borough with myself, Scott Wilson, and Dom Shaw from the Northern Echo. Hope you've been keeping well. Hope you had a good weekend. Plenty for us to get stuck into. Just before we start, a little bit of housekeeping. As we always say, if you're watching on the YouTube channel and you haven't already, then please do subscribe. It'll let you know whenever we do a new vid. Also, give us a like, drop us a comment, let us know what you think. If you're listening on the various podcast platforms, then please rate and review. Are you well, Dom?
I am, mate. I am. You know what we've got to do here on the subject of housekeeping? We've got to give our quiz results from last week, haven't we?
We do.
Our third Middlesbrough player. There were
People
a few in the
People
comments.
got him.
Two ticks. I'll have a dead quick look here. This is prep, isn't it? I should have done this beforehand.
Isn't it?
Because someone jumped straight in and
got it. Yeah.
With our first one.
I've got to admit, I was there. I was in the game in Belgrade, and to be honest, when he came on, he was a second half sub for Serbia, wasn't he? And when he came on, I wasn't really paying an awful lot of attention to who Serbia were bringing off the bench, I've got to admit. So it passed me by. It did pass me by.
I can't find the first response now. There we are. At BRJ575 was our first ever You Are My Borough
on the back.
He made 4 appearances for Borough in the 14-15 season. I won't ask. We won't roll this on to next week with can you name the 4 games?
No. So come on then. What's the answer?
Featured in. I remember seeing him in a cup game. Milos Velkovic is the name. I remember seeing him in a cup game. Here we go. I'm having a look. Oh, FA Cup, Barnsley versus Middlesbrough. Yeah, right. He played against Millwall, Ipswich, Blackburn and Barnsley in the 14-15 season. And he is absolutely in there in the list of underwhelming and extremely forgettable loan signings, isn't he?
My goodness me.
29 now, just to round it all up, 29 now and playing for Red Star Belgrade. There we go.
There we go. So he was in his home stadium. Well, so that was last week. There may be another quiz on the way. Who knows, Dom? Who knows? Where will the excitement end? Right, speaking of excitement, you were at Deepdale. There's a seamless link. And it got very exciting at the end, to be fair. We'll get into kind of the fallout from it, the obvious Morgan Whittaker, Rob Edwards stuff. We'll talk about what team, we're looking at for West Brom and all that. But let's just very quickly on the game itself. I mean, fair play to Borough. More example, I think, of the kind of spirit, the character, the resilience that we're seeing in this side. Obviously, go behind, come back and equalise. Go behind again very late on, still come back and equalise again. Again, Rob Edwards' change is absolutely integral to that. I mean, what did you make of it and what did you think it said about Borough?
I thought the first half was poor. Obviously, we split the Borough game, so I haven't seen every half of every game so far. Neither of us have. But the first half was probably as poor as I've seen Borough this season. Yeah. The second half, against a good Preston team, though, and Edwards was keen to make this point afterwards. There are 2 teams on the pitch, and we are playing good teams. It can't always just be about us. I thought Preston were good and played to their strengths. The second half, I thought Borough were really good, really good. Yeah. The absolute least they deserved was a draw. When Jordan Story heads in with 2 minutes left, you think that's harsh on Borough. Yeah. The least they deserved was a draw. And the easy kind of cliched feeling coming away from it is last year this Borough team would have lost that. But they did. I mean, the evidence is there, they did. It was a very similar game at Preston last year. Trailed 1-0, equalised, I think, through Bergzog, if I remember rightly, early in the second half, dominated the second half. And then probably the most shambolic goal they conceded all season. And there was plenty of competition. Yeah. The most shambolic was that mix-up between, I think it was Morris, Vandenberg and Ayling.
In the penalty area, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Preston score late on, and you're left again thinking, how on earth have Borough came away from that pointless? This time you're coming away from it thinking, fair play to Borough for coming back from behind, not once but twice. And fair play to Edwards again for making proactive substitutions, game-changing substitutions. Yeah. Millwall, Sheffield United, and now Preston. I think there's 3 games where Borough have gained points because of Edwards' proactive changes from the bench.
And again, it's very easy to make the contrast with everything we were talking about with Michael Carrick last season. But it's kind of unavoidable not to, isn't it? Because, we did repeatedly say last season, Carrick really reluctant to change things in games. Substitutions felt really formulaic. It's kind of the same thing at the same stage of every game, like for like, nothing really changing. Well, I think we can already safely say that that's very different with Rob Edwards.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is when the team news dropped at 11:15 on Saturday morning, I'm still getting my head around this hour and 15 minutes.
I know.
The reaction, the general consensus on social media and in the press room seemed to be, "Whoa, look at that bench! Look at the depth in that squad!
Yeah.
Look at the options he's got now." Well, Carrick did have that at times. At times he didn't. He probably didn't in the second half of last season because Boro's squad was so ravaged by injury. But I think, whether Carrick had the options or not, we saw enough over the course of 2.5 years to conclude that he didn't like making early changes like that, did he? Most of his changes did come reacting to something rather than preempting it, rather than proactively changing the game. You looked at that bench on Saturday: Strelec, Hansen, who comes on and changes it, Alan Brown with the experience, Edmondson defence, and it's still the players who you've got to come back as well. Yeah. Obviously, Nipan, who comes on and changes the game. There's a real squad now, and what we've seen is Edwards will absolutely use it, won't he?
And so under some managers and at some clubs, if a player gets taken off at half time, if a player gets taken off after 50 minutes, it can be seen as a slight on them, can't it? Because it's not something the manager normally does. He's clearly got to be pretty furious at what that player's doing. What you would say, I think, about the players in this Boro squad now is if you're taken off at half-time or if you go off, yes, you'll be disappointed, understandably. But I don't think you'll necessarily feel it's the kind of slight that you might in other circumstances, because it's increasingly clear that it's just something Edwards is going to do. And at some stage, you might well end up being the player that makes way like that. And it's not a damning indictment on you.
Because when someone's taken off at half-time, it's hard not to write that he's been hooked at half time. Yeah. And that can never be positive, can it? That is, but yeah, I don't think that. I mean, Senny didn't play well in the first half on Saturday. He was ineffective. I don't think it was that he, I mean, he didn't play well, but it was ineffective. The system didn't work. The structure and setup didn't work in the first half. Senny and Whittaker playing off Conway, who was starved of service. There was too big a gap between the midfield and the forward players. It just didn't work. But Edwards was keen to point out afterwards, and he said, I've just told Callie in there, and I've said to all the lads, when I make a change like that, it's absolutely nothing personal. I mean, there will be times when he looks and thinks that I haven't got enough. I haven't got what I wanted from that player. But on Saturday, it felt like, right, this isn't working as a collective. I need to do something about it. I actually thought, I know we're going to get on to Whittaker, I actually thought he'd make the double change at the break. I had a feeling he'd do Strelec and Nipan for Whittaker and Senny. But even just doing the one, there was an immediate improvement. And I actually thought Whittaker improved in the first 10 minutes of the second half. And I know we're going to get on to him, but so we'll leave that until then. But the Strelec his presence lifted everyone and everything, I thought. Boro improved dramatically. And then did again when Nipan came on 20 minutes down the line. And if you're an opposition team and one change has been made and Boro have already started to maybe go through the gears a bit, and then you look over 15, 20 minutes later and see Nipan or McGree or Hansen or Conway or whoever it is who's on the bench coming on, like that must be pretty disorientating and soul destroying, mustn't it?
What did you think of Strelec? What type of player did he kind of instantly strike you that he might end up being?
Have you seen that clip doing the rounds of him just before when he trots on the pitch and they're just about to kick off, he stood and he's like bashing his face.
Oh, yeah.
And so I saw that, and then I think Preston kicked off in the second half and the ball went back to the defence. And he kind of bulled towards the Preston defence. My instinctive feeling was he's bigger than I thought. He's a lot more of a physical presence than I thought.
Right, okay.
And just it was interesting that he went straight up front and Conway dropped back in. into the kind of off left number 10, because before the game on the Friday, Edwards had been telling us, hadn't he, that Lenihan Strelec can play off. But the fact that he went straight in as the 9, I thought was telling. And Boro just hung off him pretty well. He looked like a focal point that everything else worked off. I thought he was good. I thought he made an impact. And you can tell already, just from watching him, that there's the confidence that Edwards has talked about. I don't think he's on the bench for long.
We've touched on it a couple of times. We've danced around it. Let's talk Morgan Whittaker. For those of you who have been living on the moon in the last 3 days and have kind of missed it, obviously, Morgan Whittaker, underwhelming display, I think we'll say, and we'll probably leave it at that. He goes off. Let's say ironic cheering accompanies off the pitch. And then that kind of feels like that, really. But then obviously after the game, Rob Edwards, in his in-house media interview, calm, measured, I think that's got to be said, but very clear that he wanted to make his point, that he wasn't happy about it, he didn't like it, doesn't feel like that it's helpful, wants everyone to be in this together, and basically said to the Boro fans, I don't want to see that again. So first off, what did you think the reaction was like when you were sitting there kind of listening to it and seeing it?
I think that the backdrop is it. I think we've kind of got to get into the backdrop before we get to that. Yeah. I think there are a few things at play with Whittaker. I think first of all, the price tag. It is inevitable in football, isn't it, that when someone comes in for a significant fee, there's more pressure, there's more expectation. I think there's that. I think the timing of his arrival hasn't helped Whittaker.
Yeah.
He came in at a time when Boro were poor, underachieving,
and
muddled.
Yeah.
Carrick was confused with his team selection. Edwards was in. Whittaker was in. Whittaker was out. Whittaker was number 10. Whittaker was playing wide right. He underperformed in the second half of last season, but I thought it was incredibly difficult to judge Whittaker on that, to come into that team. But I think that backdrop hasn't helped him, maybe in the eyes of some fans, maybe most fans, I'm not sure, going into this season. When it happened, my instinctive reaction was that's harsh.
Yeah.
That's harsh. Because I think with that, I think the truth with that to me feels like if you're booing players or if you're kind of ironically cheering decisions, replacements, it feels like you're building up to that. It feels like someone who's maybe dialing it in, someone who's not committed, someone who's not doing it on the pitch. Whittaker has started all 6 games in all competitions so far this season. And given how much Edwards has talked about what he wants from his players, the commitment, the running, the especially from his forward players, if Whittaker was giving anything less than 100%, there is absolutely no chance he'd be in that team. It hasn't worked. It hasn't came off for him at times in games. I think he's underwhelmed at times. I think we've seen real flashes of promise from him at times as well. Saturday was probably the worst game I've seen him have this season. But across the board in the first half, Boro were poor. So I think it's really harsh to single out one player. I don't think it was any worse than Cali Sen. And you know, there's mitigation with every player, isn't there? Would you have expected more from Morgan Whittaker after he'd signed in January? Yeah, I think you absolutely would, given what he'd done at Plymouth before he came in. But I think it's far too early to write him off. I think we've seen flashes of what he's capable of. I think he's going to be a major player for Rob Edwards' side this season. And I think the reaction on Saturday was harsh.
What I think is equally interesting. So I agree with kind of all of that you've said there. I can't really dispute any of that. I think I'm like you. It felt like the type of thing that you do if your team was 15th and they were underperforming all the time and you were starting to chunter about the manager and he was coming under a bit of pressure and it's almost like you don't know what you're doing type stuff. Well, that is absolutely not where Boro are at the minute. So I think amid that kind of backdrop, Rob Edwards was absolutely right to call it out. Now, what I think is interesting is, you know, no matter how well you're doing, no matter how popular you are, calling out the fans, which is effectively what he's done, is a dangerous road to go down. It can be. It invariably doesn't work out particularly well for the manager in question. What I think's been interesting this week is pretty much to a man and woman, really, that I've seen on social media, on the message boards, on everywhere. The general feeling seems to be, yeah, fair play, good on you. Even people who were there and were involved in it are kind of saying, we hold our hands up, we shouldn't really have done that. Others are saying, you know, what you're doing kind of thing. But I think the general feeling is, you know, yeah, fair play, come out and see it, draw your line in the sand, support your players. And there's a fair bit in that, isn't there? Because what it suggests to me is from a position 2 months ago where I don't think the majority of Boro fans were really having Rob Edwards. And there's going to be some rewriting of history here, and fans are going to say, no, that's not. I don't think a lot of fans were particularly excited or wanting him. I think we're already seeing that he is now very popular and he's earned the trust of the fans, which is massive, I think. B, I think it's really clever man management in terms of wrapping his arms around Whittaker. I mean, Whittaker's going to run through brick walls for him now, you'd think. But also the rest of the squad are looking at that and thinking, well, if I'm going through a sticky patch next month, at least I know the manager's got my back and he's going to back me and he's going to defend me. So I think, yeah, you know, good man management on that side of things. And I also think you talk about the backdrop. I think the Finn Azaz situation is part of the backdrop to this as well, because, you know, we've talked about Azaz, and I think, you know, we both said in the last vid that you know, if our feeling, I think, was to Azaz, really, like, you know, really, you've got to be a bit stronger than that. You've got to be able to take that. And I still stand by that view. But Azaz clearly felt that he was being singled out. And I think internally within Boro, I think we both know that there was a degree of sympathy to Azaz about that. I don't think Boro were looking at Finn Azaz saying, that's pathetic, that's no excuse. I think they were looking at him thinking, yeah, okay, well, you know, that's something we're going to have to work around. That you know, it's an issue. We know it's there. It's been bubbling along. So I do think there's an element of Rob Edwards wanting to stamp this out straight away in case it becomes something that is really going to affect Morgan Whittaker or anyone else in the squad.
And I think there are a couple of things on that. Azaz, I don't think that was clearly a contributing factor, that what you talked about there with Azaz. But from the impressions we got, from the conversations we've had since, it felt like he never really settled at Boro. He was never really truly happy at Boro. He never really felt like he belonged at Boro. Edwards had made the point with Whittaker, and I'm reading it now. He loves playing for this football club and he's giving everything. I have to stress that. So this is someone who is absolutely fully committed. And I think the other thing on Whittaker, so we spoke to Edwards about Whittaker a few weeks ago, and we haven't actually used the quote yet. A peek behind the curtains. Some of the stuff we use might be saved from a couple of weeks ago. Because international breaks and full weeks between games, etc. So I'm not going to read it all clearly, but this was a couple of weeks ago, and Edwards said, I think he's been great. I really like Morgan. He's a terrific young man. He's going to be a really important player for this football club. He's made good strides, but this is the thing. It's little things that maybe people don't necessarily see as well. The 89th minute of a game recently, he's sprinting back to go and win the ball. These things are important to me as maybe an assist. And then further down, his work rate is incredible. And this is what I was going back to earlier. This is not Gaston Ramirez when he was desperate to get out of Boro. And with that case, you think, you know, booing when his name's announced before the game, ironically cheer when he's gone off. That was an example of someone who was clear wanted out, didn't it?
Yeah.
I think here with Whittaker, going on everything we're told, this is someone who was absolutely bought into what Edwards wants from them. If he hadn't, he wouldn't have played every game. Are there any other players who've started every league and cup game so far? Conway, maybe 2 or 3 others, that's all. And in an area where Boro are really well stocked, you know, Nipan was unlucky not to start on Saturday. Strelec is there now as well. You've got Riley McGree coming back. You've got Shanti Jansen. So it's not like Whittaker's playing because Edwards doesn't have anyone else. He's absolutely well stocked. But he's clearly impressed Edwards enormously since the very start of the summer. The interesting thing now will be Friday, because
I was just going to get to that.
For all I've said that there, I actually think there's a case to start as you finish on Saturday with Lenihan, Strelec and Conway, but I'd be amazed if he didn't start Whittaker now. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, Rob Edwards will say, as I'm, he's clearly going to be asked on this when he does his press conference. He will say, "I'm absolutely sure I pick the best team to win the game. I'm not going to be swayed by this. I'm not going to be swayed by that." It feels hard for him not to start Whittaker now, though, doesn't it? Having done all of that, or on the flip side, has it made it easier for him to leave it out because he can put an arm around him and say, "Look, I'm leaving you out, but I've got your back. I'm backing you. I don't know, which way do you think that's going to fall? I think he'll start. I think Whittaker will start.
I think he'll start. I'd be amazed if he didn't start. If he didn't start him for all that we've said there, and I just think whether or not this crosses Edward's mind, it's a story. If he now leaves him out, isn't it? Yeah. On the back of that.
That said though, we must be getting to the stage where Lenihan has to be in that team.
Yeah, and that's the interesting one. That's the interesting one because does Strelec have one more game on the bench? Do you play Lenihan? It felt the game too early for Cali Sen. It felt like going away to a Preston team that are physical, tough place to go. They've beaten Ipswich and Leicester there. That felt like a game too early. I don't think Sen will start on Friday night.
So Lenihan on the left, maybe. He has brought him on in that position, hasn't he? And I'm like you. It feels like at the minute Strelec is the easier one not to start with because he's still settling in. He'll still only have had a week's training. He's learning. He's doing all this, blah blah blah. Well, Lenihan's been there a fair while now. He's obviously made the impact off the bench. Yeah, I suspect. I wonder if that's going to be Whittaker stays on the right, Lenihan plays on the left.
Yeah, and these are the type of conversations I think we're going to have over the course of the next few weeks. Obviously, without the backdrop to the Whittaker one, but Darragh Lenihan came in at centre half, excellent. I know Boro conceded 2 goals, but if and when Dale's back fit, who do you then leave out at centre half? Yeah. Alan Brown has not come here to sit on the bench, has he? Now, at the minute he'll have to because he's not going to drop Morris or Hackney, is he? But if Brown makes an impact, when does he get his chance? There are areas all over the pitch, aren't there, where it's going to be really interesting. And we talked about this with Sunderland, haven't we, and Regis Labrise this season. His man management is going to be key because he's got a big squad. How does he keep players happy? That's absolutely going to be the case with Edwards at Boro as well, isn't it? He's got options all over the pitch. He's going to have to not rotate, but keep things fresh because he said this last week, because of what he's asking for from his players. If he doesn't, he said, his players will break. That was his word, because you can't expect players to just churn out huge effort after huge effort week in, week out. Yeah. So he is going to freshen things up, but there's a way to do that, isn't there? It's good man management that's going to be put to the test.
We know the excitement over Lenihan. There's understandable excitement over Strelec. He looks like he could be a really, really good player in the Championship. Signing of the summer, Matt Targett. Dare I even start throwing that in? I mean, he just looks absolutely what you want for a player ready to go straight into the Championship.
Goal and an assist in his first game and a half. First goal in 4 years. And it felt at the time, again, I think if you take a step back, we said it at the time, didn't we? I mean, I know we watched him for Newcastle, but if Targett stays fit, then that is a really, really smart and impressive signing, because last time he played in the Championship, he was one of, if not the best left back. It's only a few years ago that Newcastle paid £15 million to sign him from Villa after a hugely impressive loan spell. And had it not been for that bad injury he'd got, he wouldn't have lost his place in that Newcastle team at the time, would he? So I'm not surprised that he's come in and looks an immediate fit. I think where he benefited as well is there's no settling in period required, is there? He's moved from an hour down the road. He knows the Championship. He knows the division.
And the same can be said of Callum Britton, to be fair. Both of those signings have been, if you like, oven ready, haven't they? Boris Johnson phrase.
First ever reference on this?
I think it's the first ever reference, yeah. They're certainly more oven ready than his Brexit plan was. And we'll leave the politics there, Dom.
24:30. I'll make a note to clip that up for socials later on. West Brom then, Friday night. Yes. Big old game, big old occasion, isn't it? Under the lights at the Riverside and all that. Class atmosphere.
Yeah, I quite like the Friday night game. I know it's I know it's disruptive for fans' routines and all of that, and it's, you know, moving away from Saturday. It's a better slot, I think, than your like Sunday lunchtime or your Friday 5:30. I quite like a Friday night game.
And I think if you're in the position Boro are in now, if you get a result on Friday
Yeah.
night, there's always that element, isn't there, of like, right, sit back now over the weekend and watch the others toil while we sit pretty with our 3 points, hopefully.
Yeah.
There is that element of it as well, isn't there?
Do you think West Brom are going to be, I mean, you know, they weren't one of the real favourites at the start of the season. Obviously, the relegated clubs kind of filled that slot. But I think they were one of the next rank of clubs that it felt like had every chance of being up there and in and around it. Is that how you feel about them, having watched the first month or so of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one kind of unknown with West Brom was Ryan Mason, wasn't it? Like, we know he's highly rated, been at Tottenham for God knows how long, and highly rated as a coach, but first big job as a head coach. West Brom felt like Boro last season, didn't they? And they were one of the teams that badly underachieved, really.
Yeah.
And they, like Boro, were one of the teams that were always there or thereabouts, but you never felt we're going to have enough, did you, to get in?
And obviously Mowbray went back in, didn't he? And you know, couldn't haul them into the playoffs, if you like, in that last month and a half.
But the top 9 or 10 is interesting, isn't it, in the Championship? So Borough, Stoke, Bristol City, Leicester, West Brom, Coventry, Swansea, Preston, Portsmouth. Now, I know we're ridiculously early here in the season, but after 5 games, I don't think many would have had Swansea, Preston, Portsmouth, Bristol City, although they made the top 6 last season, in there, and the likes of Ipswich, Southampton, well out of it. Even Wrexham down in 21st, Birmingham in 11th. They're all teams that you'd probably have had above the teams that are in there. Yeah. But I think West Brom. I'd be surprised if West Brom weren't in the top 8
in the mix.
On the end of the season. Yeah, but I fancy Boro on Friday night.
Yeah, I've got to admit I do as well. I mean, we kind of touched on it, but maybe Nipan coming in, maybe Whittaker, but Conway starts, doesn't he? We're not at the point yet where Strelec is going to come in for Conway. I don't think.
I think he'll go Nipan, Whittaker, Conway.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I agree with that. And then obviously Morris Hackney. And you would imagine the back 5 stays the same unless Dale is back. I mean, I know we haven't had the presser yet this week. We're still a couple of days off that. We're recording this on Tuesday morning. But what was the feeling on Dale after the game?
Yeah, we were going to say, I mean, when the team news dropped and he was missing, your hope is that the illness that Edwards had mentioned on Friday was one of those. But then obviously Edwards said afterwards that it was a calf injury. I'm certain it was a calf problem that Fry had previously, but that's not to say that they're at all linked. Might be different calves, you know. It's absolutely no suggestion that it's linked. But on the back of those previous injuries, and on the back of the hugely impressive start to the season, you just felt gutted for Fry. I think, obviously a big disappointment for Boro, but you felt gutted for Fry, even if he's, you know, hopefully it's just a game or two and then he comes back in and he kicks on again. But just that he's had that momentum halted from the start of the season. He was captain in the team. He was one of, if not the best performer in the early weeks of the season. He was playing as well as we've seen him play for years. So Edwards said on Saturday, we don't know yet. We're hoping it's not a bad one, but we don't know. We'll hopefully find out more this week, see how it settles down. But it had been a week because it was the Friday in the international break when Fry first felt it. So by the time we speak to Edwards again,
so it's a worry. But as you alluded to, Darragh Lenihan, I mean, you know, what a player to be able to slot in now. Okay, he's got to be able to show that he can do it week after week after week after everything he's been through. Nearly 2 years out for Lenihan. Apart from that one really bizarre Gateshead appearance where he scored, didn't he? Absolutely nowhere. But we'll gloss that one over. But I mean, listen, it goes without saying, if Boro can get him back to where he was at, you know, when he came in, then my goodness me, that's an ideal replacement.
Yeah, because there aren't many Championship centre halves who are better, other than a fully fit Darragh Lenihan. 722 days, and again, on a personal level, you think of like the anguish and the frustration of what that must be. And it was what must have been extremely difficult for Lenihan was the fact this wasn't really one injury, was it? There was one injury in the first season that kept him back. Then he came back, played in that Gateshead game, and then, as is so often the case after a lengthy time out, there's the knock-on effect of getting back, adjusting to impact again. And there was numerous setbacks last year. But what's been pretty clear, hasn't it, from early doors, and I know I've talked about this before on the pod, I remember being at that Meet the Staff event at the Riverside, and unprompted then, he was actually asked about the academy players and giving young academy players a chance. And unprompted, Edwards talked about that. Yeah, myself, Harry and Adi all come from an academy background. So for us, the pathway for young players is hugely important. But unprompted, he also said, the experienced players are also hugely important to us. And Lenihan was the name he mentioned. We've had a few indications, haven't we, since the start of pre-season that if and when he gets back fully fit, Lenihan is going to be a major player for Edwards. Yeah. And I think everything Edwards said after the game on Saturday just backed that up. I've got it here just quickly. He said, he's a really good player and what a human being. Someone who's had his fair share of injuries. It's a really difficult spot, but he's shown so much character and fight and determination. And I thought he was terrific today. From the first day in pre-season, you could see he was fit and ready to go. Today is a really nice start and it should be celebrated. He was emotional in there. It meant a lot to him. I love that. I love that passion and the fact he cares so much. I love. He was so good in the game as well. And I thought Lenihan was good. And he did one of the kind of walk and talk brief interviews with the club afterwards. I'm just glad to be back. We've built a special squad with character, spirit, and never say die attitude. And that's the attitude of Middlesbrough as a town. Never say die, keep working hard. That's what the fans love. I mean, that's similar to that Higgy stuff last week, isn't it? Find me a brick wall to charge through this Brom game on Friday night. You can see why he's the type of character Edwards will love. And player, but character, I think.
Yeah. Prediction then for Friday night?
1-0, Lenihan, 89th minute header. No, I think Boro will win 2-0.
I was genuinely going to say 1-0. I think it'll be 1-0. I think it'll be a good game. I think they're two decent teams. I think it'll be tight. I think it'll be a good watch. But I think Boro will win it 1-0. And I'll go Nipan 60.
Oh, yeah, I'll go 2-0. And I will go also 0-0 at half-time.
Yeah.
Conway and Strelec.
Oh, that'd be nice.
A Strelec late goal on the break to round it up.
That will be good. Well, we'll obviously be there. So all the coverage across the Northern Echo, all the social channels, all the usual. Just scrolling along the bottom of the screen now is the offer. £5 for 5 months for subscription to the Northern Echo website. That'll get you full digital access, less ads, page turner app to flick through the paper, all of that. If you cannot all support us, it's massively appreciated. But get yourself along to the website, have a look at what we're doing, what we're talking about. As I say, full coverage there of the press conference of the game, all that kind of stuff. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for watching us. We'll see you next week for some more You Are My Borough.